Hey, Miss Wright, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm well. So Robin is going to do your interview. I'm just waiting on her to come in because I just got home a few minutes ago and I got to set up the dogs. But
Uh,
she's supposed to be here to do your interview. If she's not on by 6, I'm going to respect your time and jump right back in. So can you just
okay.
bear with me?
Yes, ma'am. And I can wait for Robin. I'm good.
I, just in case she doesn't jump on in time, I'm going to make sure I respect your time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Miss Wright, if you're there, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. Hey, how are you? Oh, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. All right. Well, my name is Robin, and I'm here standing in for Deshandra with Truth and Consequence. And so I just want to introduce myself to you and have some questions for you and wanted to thank you for taking the time with coming on and spending some time with me this afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, the first question, we're going to go through different sections, and this section is titled Vision and Leadership.
Hmm.
The first question I have for you is, what is your top priority for South Carolina schools in your first year, and how will you measure that success?
So, one of my top priorities, well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity.
You're
Um,
welcome.
but one of the top is early childhood education, because one of the things that I've found out as I'm traveling all 46 counties, and the data shows us as well, only 39% of kindergartners are entering into kindergarten ready for school. And we already know that when kids enter school ready to learn, ready to read, then they continue to advance above the students who do not have that opportunity. So, my number one goal is to expand access to early childhood education for all 4 year olds. Start for that universal pre-K at 4, and for for me, what that looks like is working together with like your local churches, your local, because they already do it with the first steps. And basically, that's what I want to do. I want to extend the early childhood opportunities that are available, but make sure they're actually available in all 46 counties. Because that's one thing that I'm finding too. There might be an area where early childhood access was shut down and people have to travel 10, 15 minutes. And if you're in a rural area, you know, if they don't have transportation, they don't have a lot of bus drivers, so there's a bus driver shortage. Those kids are not getting access to early childhood education. So as far as measuring, make sure every student has access. That's going to tell me in the data when I go to, well, actually, when I have these discussions, because there's a whole early childhood council that I'm a part of. So I would get statistics from that council as they do their reports and see who has access, who doesn't, why don't they, what are the struggles, and then how we can fix that. So there are reports that I would receive from this council that would help, measure if students actually have access and don't have access. That's just one way. Another way that how I would measure is the kindergarten readiness assessment. Because like I said, that right now it's showing us 39% are not ready. So once we implement this universal pre-K for 4-year-olds, get the educators go through the training, child care development workers go through the training as well, because I want a pay increase for them. That's what would help with these vouchers, would help increase pay for them as well. But getting that curriculum, I want them active, like learning through play. And so after we implement this pre-K, my measure, of course, like I said, is not only the report, but it would be this kindergarten readiness assessment.
I wanted to do a follow-up on something you just said. And I do believe early childhood education is definitely very important. And it is something that you're right, it is disproportionately affecting some counties versus others. What would you do in those counties that do have those programs, but it's underutilized? Meaning there are programs, how would you be able to get the families that aren't using these programs to start using them? Because sometimes, kids are of age and they can do pre-K, but they don't send them. They just go on and send them to kindergarten. So what would you do in those situations?
Thank you for that, because that's another thing that I'm finding out. There are two answers to that. The first thing is people don't know. So there are programs available from 0 to 5, for example, because like I said, there's this council and they give reports. And so I was looking over those reports, and there's a whole I forget exactly what the program is called, but 0 to 5. And they're talking about cutting the program in 2027 because, like you said, they're saying that it's underutilized. But it's underutilized because I bet you, I guarantee you, people don't know about it. So in response to that is making people aware of what's available to them in their community. And you do that by not just handing out papers, but town halls, or going to the neighborhoods. Like, for example, I'm canvassing as a candidate, right? Why can't, once I get in that position, I'm not canvassing to, get elected. I'm canvassing to inform people. It's like what I mean? Or have like a neighborhood block party. I believe we need to get the communities involved, and you have to go to them. What's happening right now is we're giving the information and we're waiting for people to come to us. And when I say us, I mean like the schools, the districts.
Yeah.
But we need to go to people. We need to meet people where they're at, because people are frustrated, they're beat up, they're tired, they're hopeless. They don't think things are for them because they've been pushed aside for so long. So making people aware of what's available and going to them, meeting them where they're at. And there was a second one, because what was your question again?
What would you do about getting them to utilize it? Because there are some districts that have programs and they're not utilized, and some of it is like you said, where you have parents who don't know that that it's free and it's an option, or those programs exist, or they're thinking, oh well, we need to do we need to build these programs and build these buildings, which I think is great because it is important. But also, if we have enough space to do it, and we do have it, but you have, let's just say in my district, there are 7 programs district wide that anybody can go to any of them, but only 2 of them are full. So you run into a situation where there are parents that are thinking, oh, well, it's not any space, because like you said, they may think that one program is where they have to send their kid, and they may not be thinking that, oh, well, I can send them, there are 5 other options out there for me that I can send them to. So just trying to get the word out, which I think you did answer about letting them know what's available, because in some areas they don't have those programs, whereas in others they do, but they're not being utilized to capacity. So a lot of those slots go unfilled year to year,
But the
which
second,
does
oh,
ultimately.
sorry.
No, go ahead. No, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, the last part that I was going to say is follow up on what you said, which was then it does become one of those situations where they say, oh, well, they're not using it, so we're going to cut it. And I think that happens in governance a lot with a lot of different programs. So that's all I was going to say.
And then the second half of that, because there's one thing that if they don't know, but the people who do know and then choose not to send their kids, that's another issue that as superintendent, I want to know where those areas are, because that's not everywhere. Because most of the time, from what I've seen being all over the state, people just don't know what's out there. But you also have that percent that do know. And so what I want to do for that percent is stress to them. Again, that would still be going door to door, having those town halls, those meetings, letting them know, hey, this is how it benefits your kid. And then providing them like with books. Like they might not come have their kid enrolled, but what can we give to those parents who don't want to, enroll their kid, but yet there's still an important that they get this, that they have access. So just saying, oh, they don't want to do it, whatever. No, every kid, we need every kid to rise in South Carolina, whether the parents are with us or not, we're still going to provide those resources. That's my vision for early childhood here in South Carolina.
Okay. The next question I have for you is South Carolina still struggles with student achievement. What specific strategies will you implement to improve outcomes statewide?
Okay, so student achievement. So I was a district coordinator and an instructional coach. So part of my job was to look at the data and see what interventions we needed to implement to help our kids grow. Because one of the horrible misconceptions about testing is it tries to measure a kid just on one test. And one test doesn't measure a kid's ability. And what we use at the middle school level is iReady, where they're tested at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And this isn't a one-time I got you. This is looking at where their growth, and then what areas are their strengths, and then what areas do they need, an intervention, right? So how can we elevate them, or how can we build on their strengths and then elevate their areas of growth? And these are the things we need to look at, but it's going to be different in every area, if that makes sense. Like I know I was in a rural school district where I implemented this intervention. So the needs in the rural area, as far as student achievement, might be different than a suburban area, because there are also things that influence student achievement as well. If they're homeless, for example, I was sitting with a homeless family a few months ago. Their whole life was on this cart, this hotel cart, trash bags, book bags. But the kids were truant because mom didn't know where she was going to be to send them back, because they took an Uber to school. So she didn't know where to send that Uber to come for her kids to come back. So she would keep them with her. And it doesn't mean those kids aren't smart. That's why I'm saying like one test doesn't measure, is not a true measure. But we have to find out what's happening with our kids, what's causing them to underperform. And that would go into my whole child approach, making sure that like their grades or attendance, there's red flags for the school to look into what's happening. And then connect these families with resources. Or if the kid needs tutoring or mentoring, just again, it's a community approach. All hands on deck. It's going to take all of us to lift South Carolina education. So a whole child approach is really my vision for improving the academic success for our students in South Carolina.
Okay.
Mhm.
The next question I have for you is the superintendent oversees a multi-billion-dollar education system. How would you ensure transparency and accountability in spending?
Yes, thank you. Because that's one of the biggest issues right now with the agency. And I'm not knocking the current superintendent because it's been an issue for the past 20 years. You have school districts that have gone like 4 or 5 years without audits. So when an audit is finally done, they uncover all this mismanagement and fraud, of course, because nobody's watching. So, and there's audits that should happen every year. There's a whole department within the agency that, is in charge of this. It's just like you said, that oversight though is lacking, and so I want to make sure that that we're auditing the school districts like we should, and not only audits with school districts, but I want dashboards. And I know we have a dashboard right now, but I don't know if you've accessed it. But it is so difficult to go through. You know what I'm saying? Like,
A lot of factors and a lot of
yes.
filters. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like they can say, oh, we're transparent, but you've got to have like a degree to try to get, you know what I'm saying? Like some type of. My point in saying that is I want to make our dashboards, at least for the education department or the agency, more user friendly, where parents and community members, anyone can see what is going on. Where is this money going? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I've been looking at budgets and there's a lot of money unaccounted for. I mean, it might be accounted for, but you got to dig. You got to look here, look there, but you got to know where to look. And that's not transparency. So I want to be straightforward, transparency with dashboards that are transparent, like truly transparent, where anybody, they don't need any special degree or anything to figure out where the money is going.
Okay. The next section covers teacher recruitment and retention. And teacher shortages remain a major issue statewide, nationwide. What concrete steps will you take to recruit and retain teachers?
Boy, these questions are right up my alley. Like, so one of the main things that I want to do is partner with, like, create like a compact. And this is day one. Create a compact with our South Carolina universities and our technical colleges. And we give teachers, or we support them financially as far as scholarships and aid, financial aid, right? We pay for their school in exchange for 5 years of teaching in South Carolina. And of course, that will go along with like their pay at $60,000 a year is starting. That's what I want to continue. Because, right now the legislature, we're on the track to increase teacher pay. So I want to continue that track. And get it up to at least 60,000 plus for starting. And then working conditions. One of the things that's causing teacher burnout is all these extra duties that they have to do. And like when we talked about academic achievement. So when I was a teacher, I remember I would have to like document, what they're missing, retest, reteach. Like there's so many administrative things that teachers have to do on top of lesson planning, behavior management, all the things. So I know my planning period was never enough time. Even when I had 2 planning periods, it was never enough time. So just reducing, one of the ways to improve the working condition is reducing or cutting that administrative paperwork for teachers. So those are some of the things I want to do to recruit and then retain our teachers. Because one thing that I want people to really understand is we can have the highest paying salary right? You can recruit all these teachers. But if they get into those schools and the leadership is horrible, or they're mistreated, they're disrespected, or they have a big workload that's stressing them out, or they're dealing with student behavior with no support, it doesn't matter how much you pay them, they're going to leave. So it's not just about recruiting them and with money, it's about respecting them and retaining them. How can we keep teachers? And not just by paying them.
Okay. The next question is, do you believe current teacher pay is competitive? If not, what changes would you advocate for?
The issue that I'm finding is it's not competitive, and you have school districts like Charleston County who can afford to pay their teachers. I think they're talking about $60,000 starting.
Mm-hmm.
They can afford to do that. But what about poor Dorchester 4, that rural area? Like they can't afford, and for someone to be like, well, oh well, that's their problem. No, because you know who that's affecting? The children. They don't have, their teachers are leaving and going to Charleston County. The teachers who live in that neighborhood, in that community, they're losing out on those teachers because of pay. And so what I want to do to remedy that is have some type of buffer pay, because there's a rural school initiative. There's extra money that's being allocated to rural schools to recruit or to improve instruction, and recruiting teachers is one way they can do that. And there's money to do that. What was it? I don't want to lie. It was in the millions. It was either 1 million or 5 million went to international teachers with this rural recruitment initiative. Millions, at least $1 million. Can you imagine? And do you know how much went to new teachers? $31,500. That's it. So imagine if we flip that, put that 1 million into like bonuses or something to keep those teachers who live in that community in the community. The money's there. We can do it. We just have to put things like that in place. We have to be intentional about how we use money, not throw it away. Right now, we're putting band-aids on things. We're throwing money out the window. We're paying for things that are ineffective because nobody's watching. And so what I want to do is make sure we have money, investing in our rural area, like seriously in the teachers. That way they stay and and the kids aren't affected. Because another side part of that is not only is it international teachers that are mainly in these rural districts, these kids are looking at a teacher through a screen. That's how they're filling teacher positions in rural areas. And mind you, I've sat in a class where you have a teacher on the screen, but the monitor in the class is like maybe a substitute. So do you think those kids are paying attention? No. So it's hurting the teacher shortage, especially in the rural area, is hurting our kids. So trying to supplement their pay, but also benefits. What benefits can we provide for teachers? And not just in rural areas, but in areas that aren't like Charleston County, because it's not just rural areas that can't compete like a Charleston County. For example, medical. How can we reduce medical for teachers? I remember when I'm a military wife, so I didn't have to pay for medical insurance. But the teachers who did, it took a big chunk of their pay. I remember that. And so how can we reduce that for teachers? That would just be one example. How can we provide tax cuts or tax breaks for not just teachers, but anyone who works in our schools, educators? So those are some of the things that I'm thinking of to help with competitive pay all across the state, because every child deserves a good teacher. You shouldn't have to live in Charleston County to get the best teacher.
I agree. And this is one last about the salaries, recruitment and retention. And it is, how would you support teachers, which I think you kind of just covered, beyond salary, especially in high poverty or rural districts, which I think you kind of covered a lot right there. But if you want to add on to it.
I would like to add housing.
Okay.
Because that's one thing that I know Dr. Green, J.R. Green,
In
he,
Fairfield.
yep.
Mhm.
How can we scale that, and implement that in other areas? And I am definitely going to pick Dr. Green's brain. When I get a chance, when I get in office, even before I get in office, I'm picking his brain on what he did, because that's one of the things that needs to be expanded. How did he do that? How did he get the funding? How can we work together with companies to provide this for teachers?
Okay. Well, the next section goes into student achievement and curriculum, and it is South Carolina has invested heavily in literacy and math initiatives. What is working and what needs to change?
Okay. So the current superintendent has implemented the science of reading and brought phonics back, which is a great step. Okay. The issue is it just stops there at the elementary school. There's no supports like we have in elementary to foster the achievements that they're making in elementary school. So the plus would be, yes, we're using phonics again. We have this method of teaching students how to read. But the downside of that is it's what are we doing beyond that? It's like, oh, they got it in third grade. Okay, they're good, but they're not. So continuing the reading literacy initiative, carrying that on in the middle school, make it strengthening them. Because like I said earlier, for me, it's about growth. It's not about a one and done. So yes, they might have met that achievement in third grade, but how can we keep fostering that in fourth grade, fifth grade? Do you get what I'm saying? Right now, it's not being fostered. So that's the literacy part. The math part, um, I know right now what they're doing, they have the Palmetto Math Project. Because I'm going to be honest, there's nothing really positive that's happened yet with math. I mean, they're implementing the Palmetto Math Project, which is great.
Mhm.
Um, but I have not seen um, any remarkable improvements or any improvements like I've seen with reading. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. What I'm saying is they're just now starting to look at math and see how can we do like we did with reading, how can we do it with math? So I'm not being critical in that sense. I'm just saying there hasn't been enough time for us to see the improvements in this math intervention that they've implemented. And as superintendent, I definitely am going to continue uh, with this Palmetto Math Project because the program that they're using, like I said, I was a district coordinator, so I had the opportunity to see one of the trainings, and it makes
Mhm.
math fun. It makes learning math fun. I've seen it with my own eyes. And even I'm not really a math and science person. I'm more of a reading and social studies, like ELA. But seeing how they were having fun, it like made me kind of want to like go join them. So I can't even imagine when they introduce these things to kids, how it's just going to change math, make it less, oh, I can't do this. To more, it's more hands-on, using manipulatives and things. And that's how it should be. Um, so I think we're making the right steps, but we're not, it's not set up, a system's not set up in place to maintain or sustain the gains that kids are making. So that's the change that I want to make when I could. I shouldn't even say change, just an addition.
Okay. Um, so the next question is, how should curriculum decisions balance academic standards with parental input?
Mm, yeah, because that's a big thing right now with that parental bill where they want to know like everything that's happening in the classroom. Um, One of the things that I talk about that's part of my vision is creating these um, like standards of, have you ever seen those books like you should know this by fifth grade? These are the things you should know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So that's what I want to do for our state. Create these by the time your kid finishes fifth grade, they should know this. Not necessarily all these academic standards, because I don't know if you've seen all the stand. We have tons of standards in each grade.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, it's not about the standards, because you know what's driving those standards is the standardized testing at the end of the year. So I want to shift the focus. I actually want to get rid of standardized testing. And it can be done. Florida's done it. In 2022, Florida got rid of standardized testing and they switched to a growth model. And that's what I want to do. I want to switch to that growth model where the beginning, middle, and end testing, where we look at the data to see how kids can, how can we grow kids, and not just kids who are below grade level, but kids who are on and above. Because again, that's how you grow. You grow everyone. That's how we elevate education in South Carolina. So that's part of my vision, that growth model. And then from that growth model, everything's not based on the standard and testing. It's based on these are the skills they should know by the end of this grade to be successful in the next grade, because it builds on, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
And it actually moves you into the next question, which was about standardized testing, which you actually already have, you kind of asked and answered it yourself, which is about, would you reduce it, expand it, or reform it? And you essentially have said that you would want to go to a growth model. So you would actually reform it, and then you would expand the growth model based on the skills that they need to have learned by a certain grade.
Right.
And so we'll move on to the next question. And it is about school choice and funding. I know that is a big topic right now with the vouchers and, students and having different options between private schools, charter schools, public option. And so the question is, what is your stance on school choice programs like the education scholarship accounts?
Okay. So I'm trying to think where to start.
Okay.
Because let me start with this. I believe that parents should have a choice to send their kids wherever they want to send them, whether it's public, private, charter, micro, whatever. Parents have that right. But according to our state constitution, public funds they belong in our public schools, our public institutions, right? And in 2024, the first voucher bill was challenged. I don't know if you remember that. It was,
I do.
Yeah, and it was ruled unconstitutional. So what the people in power, the majority party, they went back, they manipulated, changed the language around, and so no one's challenged this current voucher bill. And if someone were to challenge it, it could be ruled unconstitutional again, and then there would be no educational scholarship fund that would be funded with public dollars. Because one of the issues is the majority of kids in South Carolina, they go to public schools. And I was having a conversation with one lady because she was telling me how great, public schools are, or private schools are, and that public schools are so bad. And I asked her, I said, have we done all that we can to support our public schools? Have they ever been fully funded? So how can we sit here and say that public schools are so horrible when we haven't done all that we can to make them better? And so that's my focus. So like I said, parents have a choice, but public funds belong in public school, and we need to fully fund public schools. And when I say fully fund, I don't mean throw money at it. I mean, be intentional about how we use the money, because what they need in Marion County is different than what they need in Spartanburg County. So we need to find out what those needs are and provide those resources. And you find out those needs by talking to the people doing the work. I remember being a coordinator or an instructional coach. I needed interventionists, reading interventionists. That was something that I needed to go along with my intervention, because what I was finding was there are certain kids who needed a little extra help in this topic. So they needed a pullout, right? But no one ever asked me. I mean, I would try to, I wish we had a way to get the retired teachers who are in the community to come in. But again, those are systems that we can put in place if we have conversations with the people doing the work. That's how you find out what the need is. And so that's what I'm going to do as superintendent. Find out what the needs are and be intentional about how we spend the money. That's what I mean by fully funding.
Okay. The next question is, and I think you kind of touched on this also, and it is about how do you ensure public schools remain strong while expanding private or charter options?
Yes. So again, my goal is to fully fund, my priority is public schools because that's where the majority of the kids go. Now, as far as private schools, like I said, public funds going to private schools, that's against our state constitution. Um, and we've already seen the fraud, waste, and abuse that's happening. Charter schools, we've seen the fraud, waste, and abuse with that. And I know there's a bill in place that's trying to hold them accountable. Um, but it's money's being wasted when our public schools are starving for this money. Like Richland 2, for example, I read an article the other day. They're already cutting positions because they're
Mhm.
anticipating, I think it was like $25 million because kids are
Mhm.
going to other areas or are going to these other options.
Yeah.
But again, it begs that question. Why are these kids leaving? Why are the parents choosing these other options? They're choosing other options because those charter schools have programs. For example, it might be the arts, like music programs and things. These are things public schools used to have, but funding has been cut, and that's the first thing that goes. So
Yeah.
it's like it's saying, oh, public schools don't have this because the funding's being cut, and it's going to continue to be cut because these kids are going to charter schools that offer these programs. It's forever taking funding away when we can just provide these programs at our public schools and keep the kids there. Provide those options for them. Because what about the kids who want to be in band, but they don't have the program and they don't get accepted in the charter school? Because you got to get accepted in the charter school. They don't just take
Mhm.
everybody. Public schools, they have to accept everyone. Charter and
Yeah.
private, they don't. So that leaves kids behind. That leaves kids out. And so that's the difference for me. I don't want it. No kid should be left out. We have to create these options, and we have the money in South Carolina to do it. We just have to be intentional about it. Millions have been wasted. At least 10 million, like almost 10 million, has been wasted on this voucher program for kids who are already in public or private school, homeschooling. Uh, it's just a lot of abuse. We just have to be more intentional, and that's my plan.
Well, you've already, the next question was related to the public funds for private education, why or why not? And I think you have answered that. And definitely was a topic of discussion today because of what you just stated has happened in Richland too, which is our sister district here in the Lower Richland area. Um, so you do see those options, and you do see you can everybody kind of feels, well, yes, like you stated, I want to send my kid where I want to send them, and that's true. I think the topic of fully funding public education, and you're right, where a lot of schools, there are programs that used to be there that aren't there anymore because they do have to shift their resources. As such, another big area for schools is about student well-being, mental health, and
Mhm.
school safety. I know mental health was a question that was recently just brought up. I think there are some districts that are suing YouTube due to feeling that children is affecting children's mental health. So one of the questions that I do have for you is, what policies would you implement to improve school safety?
Improving school safety, because what I want to do day one is convene a school safety advisory council. Because when you think of school safety, it's not just an intruder. We're talking about mold in buildings. We're talking about um, student behavior. Um, there's so many other overcrowded classrooms, right? These are things we need to look at. So, what safety issues are there throughout our state? And then how, and then that's where I want to go from there. Like, what are all the issues? And then how can we address them? So, the report that I get back from this safety advisory or school safety advisory council will dictate my policies. So, I'm not like trying to avoid the question. I just need to know exactly what
Mhm.
we're dealing with when it comes to school safety. And again, not just intruder, but the building and the learning environment for our students and teachers.
Okay. The next question is, how should schools address student mental health while maintaining academic focus?
Mm, that's another great question. Because we have an SEL program available through the State Department, but it's not a priority. So you have some districts who are using it. Like I was talking to a school counselor in Fort Mill, and she implements this SEL policy or SEL strategies with the elementary school students there. But then you have other districts who don't implement it, and that could be for various reasons. It could be staffing, um, or just it's not a priority for the district. But my priority is for SEL to be an expectation in the elementary level. Students at that level, they need to know what their feelings and emotions are. If you look at the data, we have South Carolina has the highest number of preschoolers suspended. And instead of teaching kids about their behavior, not making excuses for kids, they just need how do they know? They have to learn. And it's not trying to excuse behavior. No, it's teaching them when they're mad and angry and they just want to do like this. No, acknowledge it, right? When they're kids now, I'm talking about like elementary.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that and then give them the language to express themselves and the strategies to deal with it. For example, my grandson's 3. He will tell you when he starts getting grouchy, he's like, I'm grouchy like the Grinch. I need to take a nap. You know what I'm saying? He's taught
Yeah.
that language. My daughter taught him that language by having conversations. She didn't yell at him and say, you know, stop being blah, 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 you know what I mean? Or go to timeout.
Yeah.
No, teach them the language, right? Give them the tools and the strategies while they're young. That will help them when they get to those older, to middle school. Now, I'm not saying there still won't be issues. And
Yeah.
because, we have life trauma and things like that. But that's where we need mental health counselors in our school because school counselors are overworked. They're wearing too many hats. And I
Yeah.
know personally, especially in the rural area, she had to do testing and IEPs and she had so many other things. There was rarely students in her office just to talk.
Mm.
I mean, she would try her best some days, if there was really an
Yeah.
emergency, you know what I'm saying? But if she wasn't as effective as she could be, if you had a testing coordinator who could take care of testing, or if you had a mental health counselor who was there full time, not once a week, but full time. That way that teacher has a or that counselor can see more kids. I'll never forget, there was a kid whose grandma was dying, right? He didn't want to come to school. And so come to find out, well, I went to my principal. I said, listen, he needs to see the mental health counselor. And she was like, he's on the waiting list. I'm like, what? A waiting list? That kid needed to be seen today. So I use that because that's an example of why we need full-time mental health counselors in our
Yeah.
schools. It's not a waste of money. People, and that's this misconception with people. They think, oh, the mental health counselor doesn't do anything. They don't realize kids are carrying so much today that we
Yeah.
would never even imagine. And so in our time, okay, maybe we didn't need mental health counselors as much, but as of
Yeah.
these kids today, they do need them. So I do want to expand the counselor team, not just school counselors, mental health counselors, um, psychologists. I know some school districts are already doing this, but again, that's the funding issue.
Yeah.
So I want to make
Yeah.
that funding available because I want to make things more equitable in our state. But in order to do that, I need to get in there and really look at our budget and because I know the money's there and I know the money's being wasted. So how can we be more intentional? And that's one way we can be more intentional about how we're spending money in South Carolina for education.
Okay. Um, the next section talks about governance and local control, and
Mm.
it's just a few more questions. And since I want to be able to get you through all the questions. I think we only were scheduled for 30 minutes, but
Oh yeah, keep going.
um,
I'm good.
I did want to just do a time check in because I just realized that. but there are only 5 more questions.
Okay.
The next one is on governance and local control. And I think this is something that we've seen probably statewide with a lot of our local districts, and in some cases, the state having to intervene. In some cases, the state potentially trying to intervene based off of whether it's fiscal responsibility, leadership, or a multitude of things. But the next question is, how much authority should the state have over local school districts?
Mm. So, one of the issues that I'm finding with our local school districts is, and not all of them, but several of them have been so disrespectful to parents, to teachers, um, to students. Um, there needs to be some type of regulations and policies for, or expectations for how we treat people, like how we treat the teachers, students, and parents in these school districts.
Mhm.
Um, and more transparency. Like the district that I'm in, they closed the whole elementary school at the end of the year by putting it in a budget proviso. And with them putting that in the budget proviso, they didn't have to talk to the parent or the school. The principal didn't even know the school was closing. So these teachers waved goodbye to these students at the end of the year, not knowing that in 2 months, like this, well, not even 2 months, that month, the school, like they said bye to the kids at the end of the year, the school closed because of this budget proviso.
Mhm.
The parents were outraged, but you know what the district said to them? It's already done. There's not going to be a second hearing. And they had the nerve to say, if you wanted to rent the space, you can do it because it's a community school. It's in the community. So they're sitting here telling these angry parents that you can rent the space if you want to have functions there. No, we want our kids to go back to school there. That's what we want. Um, but I say that because that's just showing how school districts are out of control right now, as far as how they're treating um, the people that they're supposed to be serving. And
Yeah.
on top of that is money, funding,
Mhm.
how they're spending the funding. It's not, a lot of it isn't reaching the classroom and it's not reaching the students. So that's where the audit, like I was talking about at the beginning, comes into
Yeah.
play. So
Mhm.
auditing, making sure that we know where this money is going and if it's being used properly and effectively and efficiently. And that's where the dashboard that comes in. Because if people have to show what they're doing, it's different. It puts a different people act different when they're being watched.
Yeah.
So that, and then just treatment, just having, I want to create expectations, and then also adding as far as who can be on the school board, because Moms for Liberty, that whole push to fill school district school boards with Moms for Liberty, people who don't even have kids in the system. um, I want to change that. I want to work with the legislators to provide, because there's policy, like there's a part for school boards in our education law. So one of the things
Mhm.
I want to do is add to where you have to either have a kid or grandkid in the system, or because we don't want to discriminate for the people who don't have kids and grandkids, or you are volunteering. You have done some work within the school. Um, to qualify to be on the school board. Because how are you making decisions for a system that you have no clue about? Students that you've never even interacted with. So I think that's how we can start curbing some of the stuff we saw with Moms for Liberty.
So then the last question in that section is, when, if ever, should the superintendent intervene in a district?
I think there's a policy in place right now, like as far as financially, um, which I know well, I'll use Jasper County, for example, because I was actually in that state board meeting when
Mhm.
the people from Jasper County came and spoke, looked this current superintendent in her eyes and said, "We emailed you, we reached out to you, and you did not
Mm.
respond." So they were crying out for help, right? But then she just still ruled to take over their school district because of they had
Mm.
not been audited like they were supposed to be. So that's a failure on the State Department. Like that agency
Yeah.
should be held accountable for not doing those audits, number one, and number two, for not coming and seeing what was happening. If you have these people
Yeah.
crying out to you. So that's what I want to change as superintendent. I don't want to just take over a school district. I want to make sure that we're doing all we can, doing what we're supposed to be doing. Because if those audits were being done, I'm sure Jasper County's situation would not have been as out of control and extreme as it was.
Yeah.
So that's my goal as superintendent.
Okay. Well, I have three more questions for you, and they'll be our closing questions for
Okay.
tonight. And the first one is, what is one education policy you will reverse immediately if elected?
Book ban, the book ban
Okay.
regulation. Yep. Because I want to
Okay.
restore the joy of reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I
excited about
definitely,
that.
yeah, I have heard, I guess I never really much thought about it when I was in school. We pretty much just had age appropriate books and you went and got the book that you wanted. So I can understand that. Um, the next one is, what is one issue where you disagree with your own party?
Mm, issue that I disagree with my own party.
Just one.
Mm, because I don't know. Um, I'm trying to think of all the things we have. I know there was some people I know some Democrats are for the voucher bill. Um,
Okay.
so I that would be one where I'm
Yeah.
not for the voucher bill.
Okay. And I think that's fair. I think I have seen where it is kind of some in the party are for it. They have kids that go to private school, and there are some that don't. But, as you stated, you agree with what the Constitution says, and those funds should go to public schools.
Hmm. Period.
Well,
Like the
yep.
kids say, period, poo.
The last question I have for you is, why should voters trust you with the future of South Carolina's children?
Mm. To that, I say, if they're seriously ready for change, because I know for years I've been hearing how bad South Carolina education is. And it has been for 20 years. We've had the same leadership for 20 years. So if you're ready for that change, I'm that person because being a superintendent, this role requires leadership, management, and judgment, right?
Hmm.
Leadership, building capacity, um, empowering other people, management, managing people, managing interventions and initiatives that improve systems. And then um, the last one was judgment, being able to look at the data and be intentional to produce results. These are all the things I've already done as a classroom teacher, as an instructional coach, district leader, and school leader. I have the tools and the experience to elevate South Carolina from 43rd to 1st. And that's not just blowing smoke. Like, I know how to work together with people. I already have people that I'm bringing on the team who have the same heart and passion that I do, educators who are ready for this. So that's why parents should trust me if they're really ready for their kids to have a great learning experience and to be successful, to be on pathways of opportunity, to be successful. I'm the person.
Well, that was my last question. I did want to ask you if you had anything else that I didn't ask that you want to add, or that you think maybe voters may not know about you and may be surprised to know.
Mm, I would say that it's very important that people know that I was raised in public schools. Like I went to public school, and that's what sets me apart from both of my competitors. So I not only went through public schools, my kids went through public school, and my grandson will go through public school. So I'm invested in public education. So that's definitely what I want to emphasize that sets me apart, among other things, but that
Yeah.
specifically sets me apart.
Okay. Well, that was something that I did not know about you. Definitely good. I always like to end on something that people don't know and you may be interested to know. And so that was the last question I have for you. I do want to thank you for taking the time speaking
Yeah,
with me today. Sorry we ran over a little bit longer, but I do feel like a lot of the questions you were answering, and I think they were really good questions for voters to be able to have and hear it directly from you.
I agree. I agree. And I thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, ma'am. You too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.